Let's have a look at how we can find errors in automation. So errors will occur as we go through processing within QuickBooks. But what we don't want to do really is suddenly find an error a little bit down the line. It's nice to be able to check some reports, some areas where we can actually identify these errors almost immediately. So there's three real areas that I would look at to check for errors to do with automation. So the first one really is relating to the bank. So we may pick up errors as we reconcile the bank, but what we can actually do is look at the bank through the chart of accounts and run a report on a particular bank. So if I go to here and go to my number 2 account here, in the little drop down at the end of the row, I can run a report there. And if I run a report, it'll give me the last 90 days of transactions, but I can, if I wish, go back further in relation to the entries through the bank. I could extend that beyond the 90 days. But this will give you the entries to the bank account. So in a way, this is a way of looking at the bank account without going into the formal reconcile process. And in here, we'll be able to see the markers under the cleared column as to whether the entry is reconciled in the bank already. If it's got a C here, it means it's marked, ticked as in the bank reconcile. It's ticked off. It's not yet reconciled, but it's waiting to be reconciled. It's ticked in the reconcile. And if it's got no marker at all here, for example, it means that it's not ticked in the reconcile. And because as we bring things through from the banking in an automated process from the bank feed, it automatically ticks in the reconcile. Anything without a tick should automatically bring up suspicion. So if we see things in here without the ticks, we really want to know why, and that's an identification of a possible error. It might not be, but a possible error arising for whatever reason in terms of entries through the bank. So this bank report is a useful way to start with of looking and saying, have I got anything strange going on in my bank that might indicate a problem with automation? The other two areas we'd want to look at and keep our eye on in terms of automation and properly identifying errors that might arise would be in our debtors and creditors world. So if I go to reports down the left hand side here, I've got in my favourites at the top here my accounts payable and accounts receivable reports. So if you've not got them in the favourites here, I would suggest that you go down, find them and tick in the little star to bring them to the top here. And these two reports would enable me to look at what's outstanding on my customers, so who owes me money, on my receivables, and on my payables, who I owe money to. And if we keep our eye on these two reports, we should hopefully be able to identify anybody on these reports where there's an amount showing outstanding, but we know that it's been paid, or we know we've already received the funds. So if I go to accounts receivable here, this should give us a list of people that owe us money. And if you see on here anything that looks suspicious and say, hang on a minute, I know I've had that money in, then there's a potential error there. We need to identify why it's still showing as an invoice that's not yet been paid. So we need to keep our eye in that area. And again, in reports on the supplier side, you know that you've paid somebody, then if you go to the accounts payable and it's showing on here an entry that you know has been paid, that is an indication of an error, and it could be an error to do with the automation within QuickBooks. So three areas to look at to identify potential errors within QuickBooks. One is the report under banking through the chart of accounts. We've got the two reports for debtors and creditors, the accounts payable aging and accounts receivable aging. Those are the three areas to look at to identify potential errors within your QuickBooks file.